It was the dawn of a new year. January 3rd, 1867. War had finally broken out between the shogunate army and the Sacho forces. I gotta remember that word, damn it. In comparison to the immense total of 15,000 shogunate soldiers, the Sacho managed to gather just above a third of those numbers. It had been generally assumed that victory for the shogunate army was a matter of when as opposed to if. However, the Sacho's use of advanced weaponry unexpectedly proved to be a key factor to disrupt the shogunate army's plan of attack.
Yukimura-kun, 大丈夫かね? ずっと走り通しだが、足を痛めたりしていないかい?
Oh, so we're going straight into gotta run, huh? Alright. I'm fine. In an effort to summon reinforcements, Inoue and I were sent towards the Yodo domain.
できるだけ早く役目を終えて、伏見奉行所へ戻らなくてはね。トシさんたちのためにも。
Inoue's words had evoked my memory of all that had happened in the last few days.
くそ、どうなってやがるんだよありゃ。あいつらが使ってる銃、射程が化け物みてえに長えぞ。
卵目してる隙を狙って間合いに踏み込むっつうのはできねえのか。
それが敵方が使っている銃は手元で弾丸を込められる元込式のようでして。
なんだと。あの銃、坂本が外国から仕入れて薩長に売りつけた代物だろ。あの野郎、ほんと厄介な真似をしてくれやがったよな。
Ijikata-san browsed forward for a moment, trying to quickly whip up a plan of attack.
源さん、淀城まで援軍を呼んできてくれるか。使ってる銃の性能は向こうが上だが、兵の数自体は幕軍の方が多いんだ。数で押せばなんとかなるかもしれね
え。ああ、任せておいてくれ。
雪村、お前も一緒に行け。少なくともここにいるよりは安全だろう。
It seemed the only thing the shogunate had going for itself was our numbers, and I couldn't quite stomach the fact we seemed to be falling behind. However, for the Shinsengumi's sake, I must do whatever I can. To Yodo! Soon enough, we had arrived at our destination of Yodo Castle.
伝令に参った。お上に立てつく薩長族を退けるため、ご助力願いたい。
Inoue had been frantically yelling at the enormous closed gate in the castle's entrance. Finally, someone had peered out of the second floor window, looking down at us. However, I saw something glimmer in his hands, reflecting from the sunlight. Wait, is that? Inoue, look over there! Suddenly, gunfire had been aimed and shot at us. Inoue and I ducked down to evade being targeted. What's going on? I thought the Yodo domain were loyalists.
今まではそうだったんだろうね。
What? That's betrayal!
戦の最中はこういったことがままあるものだよ。
Yep, lots of betrayal. Totally know about writing that stuff.
トシさんたちのところへ戻ろう。ここにこれ以上とどまっていても仕方あるまい。
My heart was filled with frustration. To betray the shogunate as it had been suffering. If the roles were reversed and it was the Yodo Castle asking the Shinsengumi for help, we would never do such a thing. Inoue hung his head low, walking with a little slump in his back as we returned down the path. The yawnings are back. Just then, more gunshots had echoed behind us. But it wasn't in the direction we'd just come from.
雪村君、伏せて。
I ducked instantly, and a bullet had just barely missed the tops of our head as it sped past us. Oh god.
あの旗印は土佐藩のものだな。
Tosa domain. That was... Tosa. Was Sakamoto-san's domain.
土佐藩といえば砂漠側のはずだが。
Inoue turned to face me, signaling me to keep my head low and still until he gave the sign. Then I heard another barrage of gunfire.
雪村君こちらへ。彼らは明らかに我々を新選組だと知っていて撃っている。
Great. Inoue, I had the Hold on. Big gun. Inoue and I had found some clever cover behind a pair of bushes just off the rural path.
なんだ、新選組の奴らどこへ行きやがった？
この辺りをくまなく探せ。まだそう遠くへは行っていないはずだ。
Inoue nodded at me, and together we scurried from behind the bush to behind a large tree trunk. Somehow we were able to elude the attention of the Tosa soldiers. Of course, there was still no time to rest. As soon as it seemed like the coast was clear, Inoue gave me a tired smile.
坂本龍馬が薩長と懇意にしていたのはこのためだったのか。トシさんが予想していた通りだ。
With the war being largely affected by the enemy's weaponry, and now that Sakamoto-san's home domain became the Shinsengumi's enemies, well, it was hard for me to deny how many favors Sakamoto-san seemed to have given our opposition.
雪村君は坂本と親しくしていたのだったね。辛いだろう。
It's fine. I tried my best to downplay how I felt about it all, but it seemed that Inoue saw right through me. He tenderly placed his hand on my shoulder, smiling.
心の整理をする時間をあげたいが、今は急いでトシさんのところに戻って淀藩と土佐藩の裏切りを伝えなくては。
I know. We got back into the main trail, heading back towards the direction of Fushimi in a light jog. The sun had completely set by the time we had returned to Fushimi.
あと少しだからね。辛抱してくれ。
Don't worry about me, I'm fine. Just as I responded to him, we were startled by a gang of footsteps from right behind us. It wasn't just one or two people either, but an entire troop of men behind us. We turned to face them slowly, and above them we saw the Tosa banner shining brightly under a flaming torch. Inoue, they're back!
ここまで追ってきていたか。やむをえん。
Inoue drew out his sword, glaring in the direction where the enemies were standing.
雪村君、隠れていなさい。私がいいと言うまで絶対に出てきてはいけないよ。
But Inoue...
大丈夫さ。幸い彼らはさっきの部隊と違って銃を持っていないようだ。こういう時のために天然理心流を学んできたんだよ。刀相手なら負けはしないさ。さあ。
Inoue kindly urged me to hide, so I found a small patio to hide behind, just off the street next to us. However, as I watched Inoue from the shadows, I kept my right hand firmly fixed on my kodachi. If Inoue were to run into any serious trouble in battle, I fully accept the risk of backing him up. Tosa warriors clothed in Western-style uniforms surrounded Inoue, one of them in particular licking his lips as he smirked creepily. Uh-oh. Just then, The Tosa soldiers had charged for Inoue a lot faster than he had expected them to.
これはまさか。
This is what I thought. Inoue screamed, and as I realized why, my stomach dropped like a stone. The eyes of the Tosa warriors glowed an eerie, horrific shade of crimson, and as one of them came closer to my line of sight, I saw fangs. As Inoue blocked one of their advances with his sword, he attempted to low slash in quick return. But his blade was smacked aside with ease. Inoue! My worry caused me to impulsively call out to him, and I'd panic realizing he wanted me to hide. I wasn't sure if I could use any powers, whatever ones I had, to fight the Furies, but even so, I should be able to help him out in some capacity by using my Kodachi. I unsheathed my short blade, and I moved to charge at the Fury who was about to land a fatal blow on Inoue. But another Fury came from behind, pulling my hair. Just then, Inoue let out a blood-curdling scream, and the sound of his flesh being sliced open made me wince. Then it seemed like he fell unconscious, slamming against the ground. Oh, we actually used the word ground correctly this time, alright. What? I felt my eyelids stiffen, and I couldn't blink. Blood was gushing from Inoue's body, and his eyes were glossy, as if the light had suddenly left the once bright-eyed twinkle in his eyes. What just happened? My brain refused to process it. This can't be real. You're okay, aren't you, Inoue? We still need to make it back to Ichikata-san. Inoue, who had been one of the kindest people I met in the Shinsengumi, was now dead. Hello? These kinds of things don't happen, right? Inoue, please wake up! I was in a near hallucinatory state, trying to run up to Inoue as if he were just knocked out. However, I'd forgotten that my hair was in the hands of an enemy Tosa soldier, and I couldn't move. That sounds like it hurts a lot. Ugh. Just then,
たく、とことん運がないやつやにゃ。
I heard a familiar voice. However, the tone of said voice was different than I'd become accustomed to hearing. Whenever I'd heard it in the past, no matter how tough or tense it was, there was a warmth to it. This time, however, it was unmistakably cold. Timidly, I looked in the direction from which I thought I'd heard the voice.
動きなや。少しでも逃げる素振りを見せたら、うつき。
A man adored in foreign attire appeared, who for some resemblance resembled, oh god, brain read, who for some resembled Sakamoto-san. That's a weird sentence in my brain. The moon hung above the winter sky like a white sickle, and the light gleamed on his sharp cheeks. When I caught sight of him, my hair stood. In his right hand was a 6-shooter pistol, and it was pointed straight for me. Oh, great! Why? Sakamoto-san. I just couldn't believe what I was seeing. The man I saw was him, so I called out to him. However, he didn't respond. He merely directed his icy gaze towards me. Sakamoto-san, it's you, right? Why? My hands were trembling, and I called him again. Then he fired his gun right in front of me. The bullet was aimed right next to where my foot was, hitting the ground as I lifted my leg. Right, so where are we going with this?
動くなち言うたはずじゃ。
I had no words. Rather than feeling fear from the possibility of being shot to death, I was heartbroken to see Sakamoto-san behave in a way that was so completely foreign to the person I'd grown to admire. He kept his finger fixed on the trigger, and he spoke again in a cold monotone. Oh God.
前に言うだろう。俺は新選組の敵やち。このまんま撃ち殺いても構わんけんど。おまんだけは殺すなち言われちゅうがよ。命拾いしたにゃ。
Sakamoto-san was saying things I never thought would ever come from his mouth. Did he just say he would shoot me? The Sakamoto-san I knew always said that violence wasn't the answer. Or had all of that been a lie?
これから一緒に来てもらうぜよ。おまんの親父さんが会いたがっちゅうき。
What? No, Sakamoto-san! I tried calling out to him once more, but Sakamoto-san only glanced at me with disinterest, turning to face the toss of fury behind him to give a command.
そいつを伏見藩邸まで連れてき。
Then Sakamoto-san walked into a dark alley and disappeared. Mate! Please, at least allow me to bury in a way. Please! I desperately screamed at the Furious, but no one seemed concerned in the least bit about me. My voice was a whisper in the darkness. I have no clue where this is going. We're on an adventure! A roller coaster, even! Afterwards, the men had led me, after tying me up, to the Tosa domain located in Fushimi. Waiting at the entrance to meet me was...
まさかこいつがコードの娘だったとはな。
That is an outfit, holy fuck! I don't know what to think about you dressed like this, Nakaoka. Holy shit. Yeah, are you a train conductor? Police officer? Also, I just realized nobody in the series has had a hat yet except for Nakaoka here. What the fuck? Like Sakamoto-san, Nakaoka dressed in Western attire. As I was led past him, he sneered over me like I was some despicable creature.
新選組の一味などすぐにでも殺してやりたいところだが事情が許さん。
Look, I'm only allied with the Shinsengumi, to be fair. I do not have a blue Haori on me. Why do you hate us so much? My wrists became sore from being bound together behind me. My question came from a deep grimace. I mean, if you want a awooga, you can awooga. I do not control anyone's awooga.
なぜだと分かりきったこと。あの夜大宮で我々を殺したのは貴様ら新選組だろう。
That's not true. We were actually coming over to warn you. I sat on my knees trying to plead my case to Nakaoka, and he kicked me in the cheek.
あの夜だけではない。池田屋事件で、金門の変で、どれだけの同志が貴様の仲間に殺されたと思っている。今日本が置かれている状況を 貴様ら幕府の犬どもがどれだけ理解しているというんだ。日本が西洋の植民地となり、我々の子孫が奴隷の民となってしまってから後悔しても遅いんだぞ。
I love this comment every single time because it just shows them they're hypocritical. Because they still choose to use Western things such as guns and uniforms. I just gotta point that out every single time. Nakoko's eyes looked like tears were beginning to form inside of them. He was right. Many of the Shinsengumi men had made a point to slaughter many nationalists. On that alone, he had a legitimate grievance. You're not the only ones who've had their comrades murdered. You guys murdered Inoue. I mean, I guess it can be questionable, but they decided to get the more advanced guns than the guns that were already in Japan. I mean, they still took the same amount of time to load, but they were a bit faster and a bit more accurate, so... I don't know, they chose to actually buy the guns. They choose to use the weapons that their enemies would use if they were to be invaded by Western countries. So I just see it as hypocritical at this point. They want the foreigners gone, but yet... we'll buy from said foreigners. A man who has shown anyone anything other than generosity since joining the Shinsengumi was just murdered in cold blood by the Furies. I wished to say more, but my sobbing stopped me. I knew that crying couldn't help me here, but it couldn't be helped. The tears blurred my vision. If I hadn't so needlessly spoke out on impulse, then maybe Inoue would have lived. He had been like a father figure to me, looking out for me as long as I had known him. I had nothing to show for it. No way to repay him.
だからどうした。我々が貴様らにされたことをそのまま返しただけだろう。
As Nakoka continued barking his spiteful words, I bit my lips.
貴様、鬼の一族だそうだが、何の力もないではないか。
That's because no one has taught me!
これなら、我々羅刹の方がよほどマシな戦力になる。なあ、坂本。
I saw Sakamoto-san off to the side, staring at me with disinterest, and he muttered to himself.
そうやにゃ。
I was in disbelief to what I was seeing, and my heart ached as he just glared at me coldly. So had Sakamoto-san become an enemy of the Shinsengumi after all? I tried to keep myself in denial that any of this had been happening at all.
こうして人ならぬ身となったのは予想外だったが、おそらく草場の陰で眠っている同志たちがこの力を使って徳川にとどめを刺せと言ってくれているのだろうな。
As Nakooka monologued self-righteously, he shot me a hateful glance.
言っておくが、逃げようなどとは考えるな。幸い貴様は怪我を負ってもすぐ治る身だ。おかしな真似をしたら容赦なく仕置きをさせてもらうぞ。
Nakooka and Sakamoto-san left me alone in the room, and I was still tightly bound. As I got some time to myself finally, my mind immediately jumped to Inoue. I remember one spring day many moons ago, I made a red bean paste treat, and he seemed to be enjoying it so genuinely. Oh no, we're getting a memory about Inoue! Oh! My heart.
美味しい。雪村くんはきっといいお嫁さんになれるだろうね。
He always heaped praise on me. Just like when we'd moved to Fudoto Village.
おや、お茶を入れてくれたのかい。わざわざありがとう。気がつくと、ずいぶん長い付き合いになったものだね。これも何かの巡り合わせかな。これからも、イサミさんやトシさんを頑張って支えていこうね。
When Saito and Heisuke had left the Shinsengumi and tensions were high, Inoue-san remained jovial, doing his best to improve everyone's mood. I'm not sure I could possibly count how many times his kindness saved me from myself. I can imagine what became of his body. Was his body still sprawled along the frozen ground? Or had someone come for his head? No. I can't let myself stay trapped in here. I couldn't let him down by failing to fulfill the mission he passed on to me in his dying moments. Is anyone guarding this room? If so, I wondered how many men there could be. I put my ear against the door, but I heard nothing. What should I do? Stay and talk to Sakamoto-san, apparently. I think waiting for Sakamoto-san may be better. From what I'd seen from other Shinsengumi members who had become Furies like Sanon-san and Heisuke, their personalities hadn't changed much. So that tells me that this shift in character was deliberate, and he, for whatever reason, is acting out on purpose. Of course, it also meant that the side of himself that he'd shown me was all in act as well, but... Just then, the sliding door opened. The person who entered was...
随分と諦めがええがやにゃ。ま、扱いやすうて助かるけんど。
He still spoke with this unfamiliar coldness in his voice, and it made me sad hearing it. However, then Sakamoto-san quickly moved behind my back and began to work on untying the ropes binding my wrists together. Huh? I was so confused, then I looked back at him.
Shh. でかい声を出すな。他のやつに気づかれるとまずいき。
He brought his voice to a whisper in his face. It was the same warm, adorable Sakamoto-san that I knew so well. He shut his eyes briefly, exhaling as if he had been caught in wrongdoing, and then began to ask me.
おまんと一緒におったあの人。井上さんち言うたか。
Oh. I see.
あの人の墓は俺が作ってきた。俺が殺したようなもんやき。
He buried Inoue for us. Alright, he gets some points back. I don't know what he's playing at though. Is he trying to be genuine? I'm confused. Is this the real Sakamoto or is it an act? I don't know. He's a trickster character. But we may find out just yet. Sakamoto-san bit his lip bitterly, casting his eyes towards the floor like an embarrassed puppy. While I appreciated his sentiments, Sakamoto-san's words made Inoue's death just a little more real. I could only look down and I'd begun sobbing. After spending some time shedding tears for Inoue-san, Sakamoto-san looked at me apologetically and took out my kodachi to hand to me.
これ返しちょっき。大事なもんながやろ。
Thank you. I had a sense of familiarity and security return to me when I accepted the kodachi. Thinking about it now, it was my father who'd originally passed this kodachi down to me. Considering how things went the last time I saw father. Thinking about him gave me mixed feelings. After a brief pause, I asked Sakamoto-san something. Sakamoto-san, why were you acting like that earlier?
敵を騙すにはまず味方からち言うろ。中岡や行動。それから、南雲薫が何を企んじゅうかか。
Yes. So he really doesn't trust those three. Nakaoka. I recalled the hateful glares he had directed towards me, and my heart sank. He really did seem to harbor a lot of resentment for the Shinsengumi.
まあ、さっきあいつが言いよった通り、仲間をたくさん殺されちゅうきね。
So are you resentful towards us too, Sakamoto-san? Sakamoto-san seemed to consider the question for a moment, scratching his chin before facing me.
さっきおまんも言いよったろ。井上さんは俺らに殺されたち。仲間を殺された恨み、身内を殺された恨み、先祖を殺された恨み。遡っていったらキリがないろ。何より今の日本にはそんなことよりやらんといかんことが山ほどあるき。身内同士で争いよっても意味ないき。
His words relieved me. Uh-oh. I think that's a fire truck. Where's it going? Oh, it's gone. Fire truck. Really, a water truck. Oh god, it did pick it up. Yay! Fire truck. At the very least, he seemed to retain some of the kind-heartedness I'd grown to like.
ってことで、行くぞ。これ以上の長いは時間の無駄やき。
Where would we go?
それは逃げながら考えるき。ついてきや。
Alright, let's go on an adventure again. 待って. I followed Sakamoto-san as we ran out of the room.